a devil sent to kill you has fallen in love with you. Now, that's an idea that forces us to confront something deeply paradoxical. Here we have a force of destruction, something whose very existence is defined by malevolence, by the intent to annihilate. And yet, something shifts, the mission falters. Why? Because an emotion, a connection, a sense of attachment suddenly overrides that darkness. And that's an incredibly compelling concept, not just as a narrative device, but as a reflection of something profoundly human. You see, when we think of evil, we like to imagine it as something external, something out there. Monsters, demons, villains. But the truth is, evil is also an internal force. It exists within systems, within institutions, but most disturbingly within individuals, within us. And what's fascinating is that evil, as terrifying as it is often structured, logical, even predictable in its destruction. It has a role, a purpose. To dominate, to manipulate, to consume. It moves with precision, unburdened by guilt or hesitation. Until, of course, something disrupts it, and that disruption, unexpected, irrational, inconvenient, is love. Now, let's think about what that actually means. Love in its truest form is an act of surrender. It demands vulnerability. And vulnerability is fundamentally at odds with the nature of destruction. A predator does not feel affection for its prey. It does not hesitate before striking. But what happens when it does? What happens when the killer starts questioning its own nature, when it begins to see the intended victim not as an object to be destroyed, but as a person, as something precious? That hesitation is the first crack in the foundation of its malice. That moment of doubt is the beginning of transformation. This isn't just an abstract concept. It's something we see play out in reality time and time again. Think about the historical figures who devoted themselves to destruction only to be undone by something deeply personal. By a friendship, by a relationship, by a single act of unexpected kindness. Think about the stories of tyrants softened by fatherhood, criminals reformed by the affection of a stranger. What does that tell us? It tells us that even the darkest forces are not as invulnerable as they seem. That malevolence, when confronted with something real, something pure, does not always remain unshaken. But let's not romanticize this idea too much, because there's a danger in that as well. Not every monster wants to change. Not every devil abandons its purpose, and not every act of love is enough to redeem what is fundamentally corrupt. Some forces remain destructive, no matter what they encounter. But the mere possibility that something designed for evil can be derailed by something as unpredictable as love, that's worth examining. It challenges everything we assume about the rigidity of morality, about the permanence of a person's nature. So then the real question is, what do we do with that knowledge? If even the most sinister force can be changed by something as profound as love, what does that say about our own capacity to change? About the people we fear, the people we deem irredeemable, and more importantly, if love has the power to turn destruction into devotion, then what potential are we wasting by refusing to wield it? Because if a devil can learn to love, then what excuse do we have? If love has the power to disrupt destruction, then what does that tell us about its true nature? It suggests something profound. Love is not weak. It is not merely an emotion or a passing sentiment. It is a force strong enough to challenge even the deepest malevolence. And that raises an important question. If something is fundamentally destructive as a devil, Something created for the sole purpose of harm can be thrown off course by love. Then perhaps love is far more powerful than we give it credit for. Love, in its truest form, does not ask for permission. It does not negotiate. It does not submit to the rigid structures of control and dominance that evil thrives on. Instead, it invades, it disrupts, and it forces transformation. Because real love, deep, unshakable, all-consuming love, is not passive. It demands change. It forces the one experiencing it to see beyond themselves, beyond their programming, beyond the constraints of their own nature. And that is terrifying. For a devil, for something that has never known anything but destruction, love is not just foreign. It is a threat. It challenges the very foundation of its existence. Imagine that for a moment. A being whose identity is tied entirely to power and control suddenly encounters something it cannot control, something that softens it, something that demands it act against its own nature. That is the ultimate existential crisis. Because if love is real, if it truly means something, then the devil cannot remain what it was. And if it cannot remain what it was, then what is it? This is the paradox that defines all real transformation. Because love, in the way we are discussing it, is not simply an emotion. It is a reordering of priorities. It forces one to consider the other as valuable, as worth protecting rather than destroying. And that single shift, moving from destruction to preservation, from dominance to care, is enough to unravel even the most deeply ingrained patterns of malevolence. It is why dictators fear love. It is why oppressive systems try to stamp it out, because love makes people see each other as human. And once you see someone as human, it becomes almost impossible to treat them as an object. This is why in history, love has always been the most dangerous and revolutionary force. It is why totalitarian regimes attempt to destroy authentic relationships, because love creates loyalty that surpasses fear. It is why tyrants are threatened not by weapons, but by people willing to sacrifice for each other. Because love is the only thing powerful enough to make people act against their own self-interest, to make them defy orders, to make them question the ideology they've been trained to believe. If a devil can fall in love, then even the most deeply ingrained evil can be shaken. But that does not mean love is easy. It does not mean love always wins. Love requires courage. It requires endurance. And most importantly, it requires the willingness to confront darkness without becoming it. That is where most people fail. They think that fighting evil means becoming just as ruthless, just as cruel, just as unrelenting. But that is a trap. The moment you adopt the tactics of destruction, you become another agent of it. The real challenge, the one that love forces upon us, is to stand firm without losing our humanity, to resist without hating, to fight without becoming the thing we are fighting against. So if love has the power to change even the most wicked, then what does that say about the way we engage with the world, about the way we treat those we deem irredeemable, about the excuses we make for our own failure to act? If love can make a devil hesitate, then what more could it do if we had the courage to wield it? If a devil sent to kill you has fallen in love with you, then it is caught in a conflict that is not just external, but profoundly internal. It has been given a mission, a purpose, to destroy, to dominate, to erase. And yet something within it resists. That resistance is not logical. It is not part of the plan. It is something deeper, something uncontrollable, something that even the most malevolent force is not immune to. The emergence of an unexpected, irrational attachment. Love has infiltrated where it does not belong. And now, the devil stands at a crossroads. This is the nature of true internal conflict. It is not the simple weighing of pros and cons, not a calculated risk assessment. It is the battle between what we are and what we might become. It is the agony of realizing that the path we have walked, the one that has given us certainty, structure, even identity, may no longer be tenable, and that is terrifying. Because what happens if a being defined by destruction no longer wants to destroy? It means the death of the self as it was once known. It means an identity crisis of the highest order. Psychologically, this is what happens when we encounter something that forces us to change. We are creatures of habit, built on patterns, conditioned by history. We follow our programming, whether that programming comes from childhood, from trauma, from ideology, or from sheer necessity. The devil, in this case, is no different. It is a creature of function. It has a role to play. And yet love does not care about function. Love disrupts order. It makes us question what we once thought was inevitable. And that questioning is dangerous because once you start questioning your purpose, your mission, your very existence, you may not like the answers you find. The ancient Greeks understood this well. They spoke of fate, of destiny, of inescapable roles assigned by the gods. But they also told stories of those who defied their fate, of those who in the face of overwhelming certainty chose something different. And that choice, whether to say the course or to change, is where true power lies. Because to change, truly change, is not just to decide differently, it is to suffer. It is to sacrifice the old self to endure the pain of transformation, and many, perhaps most, will refuse. So what does the devil do? It has two options. It can suppress what it feels, reject it, double down on its nature, and complete the mission. That is the easy route. That is the path of least resistance. That is what most people do when faced with an inconvenient truth. They ignore it. They deny it. They bury it beneath duty or ideology or sheer force of will. But there is another option. The devil can allow itself to feel, to let love in, to acknowledge that it is no longer who it once was. And that choice is the most difficult of all because it is a leap into the unknown. This is the same choice we all face when confronted with something that challenges our beliefs, our sense of self. Do we cling to what is familiar, even if it is destructive, or do we risk transformation, even if it means the death of who we were? The devil's dilemma is not just its own, it is ours. And so the question remains, when you stand at that crossroads, will you choose what is easy? Or will you choose what is right? Because if even a devil can hesitate, if even a creature of pure destruction can find itself questioning its own purpose, then what excuse do you have for refusing to change? If a devil sent to kill you has fallen in love with you, then the question isn't just about its internal conflict. It's about whether that transformation is real. Is this a genuine shift, or is it simply another layer of deception? Can something inherently destructive truly change? Or is it merely adapting, evolving into something more insidious? That is the test of trust. That is the test of transformation. Because here's the problem. Change is easy to fake. People lie. They manipulate, they adjust their behavior to achieve a different outcome, but that doesn't mean they've changed at the level of identity. The devil, if it is truly malevolent, could see love as just another tool, another means to an end. And that's a danger. When something built on deception begins to speak the language of sincerity, how do you tell the difference? This isn't just a hypothetical problem. It's a reality we face constantly. People claim to change all the time. The abusive partner promises they'll never do it again. The corrupt politician vows reform. The manipulative friend swears they've learned their lesson, and sometimes they mean it, but often they don't. Often the change is an illusion, a temporary shift designed to maintain control. So how do you distinguish between a lie and real transformation? How do you know when someone or something has truly turned away from its original nature? The answer lies in suffering, because real transformation is not painless. It is not convenient. It does not happen overnight. If the devil has truly abandoned its mission, then it must be willing to suffer for that choice. It must be willing to endure the consequences of defying its own nature. And those consequences will not be small. To turn away from malevolence means to lose power, to lose certainty, to lose everything that once defined you. That is the cost. That is the price of redemption. So when someone claims to have changed, the question is simple. What have they lost? What have they sacrificed if the answer is nothing? If they have abandoned their old ways but retained all the benefits those ways afforded them, then be skeptical. Real change always leaves scars. It comes with a price. If a devil has fallen in love, if it truly intends to step away from its mission, then it must be willing to suffer for that decision. Otherwise, it is not transformation, it is manipulation in disguise. This is why redemption is so rare, because most people, when confronted with the cost of change, refuse to pay it. They want the appearance of transformation without the pain of it. But there is no shortcut. There is no easy way out. If the devil is to be trusted, it must be willing to burn for that trust. And the same is true for us. If we claim to have changed, if we claim to be different than who we were, then where are the wounds that prove it? Where is the evidence of the sacrifice? Because without that, what are we? Just another liar? Just another manipulator? Just another version of what we once were, dressed up in a new disguise? So when faced with transformation, whether in yourself or in another, ask the only question that matters. What did it cost? Because if the answer is nothing, then the change is nothing. And if even a devil must suffer to become something new, then why should you be any different? If a devil sent to kill you has fallen in love with you, then the next question is inevitable. Can you love it back? That is the real test. Because it's one thing for something dark, something destructive to be drawn toward the light. That's almost expected. Even the worst of us crave meaning, crave warmth, crave something real to hold on to. But it's another thing entirely for the light to reach back, to extend its hand, to say, I see you, I accept you, I love you too. That is the moment where everything changes, or where everything falls apart. Love, real love, is not just about feeling. It is about risk. To love something or someone who was once an enemy, who was once dangerous, who was once a force of destruction, is to take a gamble on the idea that redemption is possible. And that is not a gamble most people are willing to take, because what if you're wrong? What if you open yourself up only to be betrayed? What if the devil's love is just a trap, a trick, a momentary hesitation before it remembers its purpose and completes the mission? This is the fundamental dilemma of forgiveness. It is the tension between hope and self-preservation. Because to love something that has hurt you or could hurt you is to risk everything. It is to lower your defenses, to step into vulnerability, to say, I choose to believe that you can be more than what you were. And that is terrifying, because belief can be dangerous. Belief can get you killed. So what do? Do you reject the devil outright? Do you say, no, I cannot love something that was sent to destroy me? I cannot take that chance. I will not play the fool. That is the logical choice. That is the safe choice. And sometimes it is the right choice, because not all monsters change. Not all threats disappear just because you want them to. Some things remain dark no matter how much light you shine on them, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes the very act of being loved back is what completes the transformation, because love is not just something that disrupts. It is something that remakes. It is something that calls a person or a devil towards something higher. And when that love is returned, when it is embraced rather than rejected, it has the power to make the change permanent. Because it is no longer just an internal struggle. It is no longer just one side fighting against itself. Now it is a bond. Now it is something shared. Now it is something real. But here's the problem. Even if you do love the devil back, even if you do take that risk, even if you do choose hope over fear, that does not mean the story has a happy ending. Because change does not erase the past. Love does not undo what has already been done, and the world is not so forgiving. Even if you accept the devil, even if you believe in its transformation, the rest of the world may not. And now you are tied to something that others still see as a threat. Now you bear the weight of that choice. Now you carry the burden of defending something that once sought to destroy. And that is why love is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. To love something broken, something dangerous, something that others fear, is to take on the consequences of that love. It is to say, I see what you were. I see what you are trying to become. And I am willing to stand beside you as you fight that battle. But that is not easy. And not everyone is strong enough to do it. So the question is not just whether the devil can love, it is whether you can. And if you do, if you take that chance, then you must be prepared to face the cost. Because love is not just about connection. It is about the willingness to suffer for that connection. And if you are not willing to suffer, then perhaps you were never truly willing to love at all.